Hi everyone. I'm Nancy Leon, the training manager here at Emily's List, and I'm really excited for y'all to be here today for our Rolodexing and mapping your contacts webinar. We really appreciate y'all taking the time to learn with us today. So just starting off by giving you a little bit of background on what Emily's List is, we are the largest resource for women in politics. We help recruit and train pro-choice Democratic women to run for office. Since our founding in 1985, we've helped elect over 100 women to the House, 26 to the Senate, 16 governors, and nearly 1,100 women to state and local office. We've also had over 50,000 women reach out to us and say that they're ready to run for office. So hopefully these trainings will give you the tools and set your foundation for you to run your campaigns. So some webinar norms before we get started. Firstly, invest in our time together. Participate in any questions and activities that we may ask. You can put those in the chat box. Secondly, all questions are valid, so please type them in the text box if you have any questions for us. I know some of you sent them beforehand, and we're going to be addressing some of those today, so thank you for submitting them. And lastly, our slides are internal, and we will be sending you a recording of the training afterwards so that you can refer back to it as many times as you may need. So to get started today, I am going to introduce you to our trainer today. Her name is Sarah Carrillo. She is the State and Local Campaigns Midwest Finance Advisor. She's going to go through the agenda with you all, and we'll get started with the rest of the training. And I will be back for our Q&A section, but Sarah can take it away.
Hi everyone, thank you so much, Nancy. It's great to be here today, and I'm super excited to talk about mapping your contacts. So quickly, our agenda for today, we've already welcomed you. We've done our housekeeping announcements. Next, we'll kick off by talking about starting strong and some basics of mapping your personal circle. We'll take a Q&A break and then dive into some more logistics of developing your list, and then talk through some strategies for reconnecting your network. Finally, we'll wrap up with some Q&A. Like Nancy said, if you do have questions, please go ahead and put those in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can. All right, so we're starting strong today. And next slide, perfect. So you fundraise for a couple of reasons. You're probably on this webinar because you're considering running for office, maybe you're already running, but as you know, you need to fundraise for a variety of reasons. First, and probably most importantly, to pay for things. You need money to pay for literature and ads and your website, staff, a whole bunch of things. You also need to fundraise as a show of strength. When people see strong fundraising numbers, that demonstrates that you're a competitive campaign and that you're a candidate who's taking this race seriously. You're going to do what it takes to win, and you have the resources to back it up. Your fundraising can also reflect the narrative of your campaign. If you're raising from lots of different people with priorities similar to yours or maybe different than yours, that shows that you're a campaign that wants to bring people in and engage them in conversations. So fundraising tells a story, like we just talked about. When folks look at how much you've raised, it shows that you're willing to work hard, ask everyone for money, and put in time and effort into something that's important. If you're raising a lot of money, clearly you're working at it. People want to elect other people who work hard. So that's one thing your fundraising tells. When people look at how many donors have given to your campaign, they can see how much excitement there is. When people give to a campaign, it's because they care about it, right? They want to invest in something. So if you have lots of people who have made a choice to give and engage in your campaign, that shows that you're not the only one who's thinking about this. Lots of people are. When people look at the average contribution for your campaign, it shows that you want everyone to get involved, not just people who can give $1 billion, not just people who can write you max out checks. You want to bring in people from your community, people who are able to make all different sizes of contributions, and that there's a place for everyone in your campaign and in your fundraising operation. So as a quick reminder, to sum everything up here, your fundraising and your Rolodex list should reflect the breadth of your life experience, your community, and your networks. In other words, the folks that you're asking for contributions should be reflective of what you've done in your life and what you care about. So, as you start thinking about who you'll ask for contributions first, you're going to want to map out your network, which we'll teach you to do today. We also call this Rolodexing. You might have heard of that before. You are going to want to ask everyone. I'll reiterate this at a few points throughout today's webinar, but you don't want to discount people or just exclude people from your Rolodex. You should include everyone. And then also, don't limit yourself by geography. Just because you're running in one place doesn't mean that folks in another area can't donate. We're learning these days that things are more global than we ever knew, and that includes fundraising. All right, next we'll talk about the circles of benefit a little bit. We think about the circles of benefit as the most effective way to target donors. Has anyone here seen the circles before? Go ahead and drop a yes or a no in the chat to give us a sense. All right, seeing some yeses, some nos. I'll give you a quick review either way. So our circles of benefit are a way that we think about fundraising and about our donors. You'll see the candidate, you, in the center. The next circle around the candidate is the personal circle. That's what we'll be focusing on today. And I'll go through that more in a second. But your personal circle includes people that you know, that you have a relationship with. So that could be family, friends, etc. Your next circle is the ideological circle. These are people who will give to your campaign because they care about the same things as you. They have the same interests as you. If you care about clean water, people in your ideological circle might also care about clean water. Folks in the axe to grind circle have something to lose if your opponent wins. So they will face a definite loss if the opponent is in office. And then people in the power circle invest in your campaign once you've demonstrated that you're probably going to win. You've put in a lot of work, and they typically care less about ideology or anything else and care more about money and jobs that might be at stake. You'll see these arrows that go out. You've got time and viability. It takes more time to convince someone in the power circle to give than someone in the personal circle, and you need to demonstrate more viability to get a contribution from someone in the power circle than in the personal circle. When I say viability, I mean things that make you a good candidate for this position, someone who can win this race, someone who is able to do what they need to do to win. So that could include polling, it could include fundraising numbers, it could include number of volunteers recruited, it could include a variety of things. So that's a quick overview of the circles of benefit. If you'd like more information on those, we do have a webinar on it. So I'd encourage you to check out our training center and our webinars, quick plug there. That can give you more in-depth information on these. But like I said, today we're focusing on the personal circle. Your personal circle includes people that you know. So family, friends, colleagues, etc. These are the people that will give to your campaign first. They're the first ones to join you. When you start to raise money, you should always, always, always start here. And the early support that they give you will bring you some viability as you expand towards the outer circles. The more you're able to raise as you Rolodex and work through your personal circle, the more your campaign will appeal to folks in those other circles. Your message to people in this circle is simple, just that this is important to me, you love me, you care about me, I hope you'll join me in this. Ooh, so after you start thinking about those circles, you're going to want to categorize, excuse me. I'll have a spreadsheet example in a second for you, but we'll talk through categories first. So we're in your personal circle. I'd encourage you to start thinking about who in your life can you pull categories out. So think about your immediate and extended family. That's the first place I'd start. You should next shift into thinking about your early life. Even if you haven't been in school for a while, think back to elementary school. Like I said before, don't discount anyone. Just because you write it down doesn't mean it'll be a key part of your fundraising. But writing it down can bring you more ideas, and you don't know where it'll lead you. So start with every school you've been to. Start with your teachers. Think about who you lived next door to growing up. Was your family involved in a faith community? Were you in the marching band? Did you play softball? What was your after-school job? List everything you can think of as a category. Next, if it's applicable, think about college and grad school. Think about who you lived with, what you were involved in. Were you in a sorority? Were you involved in a campus ministry or a sport or something else? Think about who you interacted with day to day, professors, advisors, other people on campus. Think about volunteer experiences, jobs. If I were making a Rolodex for myself in college, I'd think about my college roommates. I'd think about the church I attended in college, the admissions office where I worked. All of these would be categories. We'll keep going with categories. Think about postgraduate employment. You should list every job you've ever had as a category. Include colleagues and supervisors. If you worked with vendors, put those down. Those are all people who you know. You have a relationship with them. List them. Again, we're at a brainstorming point, so the more information you can include, the better. Don't leave anyone out. And then think about every change of address you've ever had. Each time you moved, chances are you made new friends, you had new neighbors, you got involved in different things, you picked up different hobbies, were active in different associations and organizations. Include those. Personally, the list of friends and neighbors I had in Michigan is definitely different than the ones I have now in Illinois, so I would include those as different categories. And then from this point on, I'm going to refer to these categories that you've listed as donor groups. These are groups of people that can be donors to your campaign, and they each fit into a different group. There might be some overlap, so just list folks in the one that you think of as their most close association. So we've got an example here. You can see that things are broken down in terms of those donor groups we talked about on the left. So we've got an immediate family donor group, an extended family donor group, childhood community and neighbors, all the way through those different groups we talked about. Your Rolodex might have way more lines, it might have fewer, but I would include everything that you can possibly think of. Be creative in thinking of different places to put things. All right, so we're going to practice a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and read this example out loud, and then I'm going to need you to put some things in the chat. While living in New York City, Selena Gonzalez devoted most of her time to her career and building a community of close-knit friends. Whether it was attending a monthly book club meeting, going to a happy hour with college alumni in her area, or participating in a volunteer activity at her neighborhood food bank, Gonzalez took every opportunity to get involved and make new friends. She became active in PFLAG, where she met her now partner, Marika Lee, at a fundraiser for the organization in New York City, when Gonzalez was on the host committee. You might have guessed this question. Who should be included in Selena's Rolodex? We'll put the excerpt back on the screen, and if you can share your answers in the chat, go ahead and list as many donor groups as you can glean from that quick little excerpt. We'll give you a minute to think through a couple. All right, seeing some answers. We get a couple more. All right, getting lots of answers. Awesome. Thanks so much for throwing those in there. So as we look at this, a lot of you picked out her coworkers. Awesome. Other volunteers at the food bank. Also awesome. Her book club. A lot of you found that. Good one. What about the folks in PFLAG? I'd definitely count that as a donor group. I'd also count Marika's friends. Marika knows people. Let's include her in there as well as her own donor group. I would also think about fellow college alumni. I would think about friends that she knows from her building in New York City, other friends she's met just by living there, people who attended who attend regular fundraisers for PFLAG. All of those are different groups that you could throw into her Rolodex as a donor group. Does that make sense? Does anyone have questions on that? If you do, drop those in the chat and we'll get to those. And here you can see an example of her Rolodex in a spreadsheet form. So sounds like we got most of those groups listed here. We've got New York City Career, New York City Friends, Book Club, College Alumni, PFLAG, including that host committee for sure, and then her partner. All right, awesome. You definitely get it. So once we've listed all of these donor groups, we're going to think about how much we can raise from each donor group. So once you put down a number, I'd encourage you to just make a quick estimate of how many people you think will fit in that group. I'd focus on the number at this point. Don't worry about getting into the logistics of counting every single person. We'll do that later. But once you, for example, put Selena's book club down, I would just make a quick estimate of how many people usually attend book club. 10? Cool. So I'd put a 10 next to book club. Next, I'd think about how much each individual might be able to give to your campaign on average. This is not a science. Just go with your gut feeling. If you think each person in book club can give $100 to the campaign, put down $100. Don't worry about any research at this point. You're just going for some basic numbers. You'll be able to find something called your raise projection if you think about the number of people and how much their average contribution might be. That will give you a projection of what you might be able to raise from that group, or your raise projection. So next we'll look at an example. So we go back to that sample Rolodex we had before. You'll see each of these groups has an estimated number of people, an average contribution, and then a guess and a raise projection. So if I'm thinking about my immediate family, there's 5 people. Chances are that some might give $100, some might give $500, some might not give at all. But on average, we're expecting $100. That brings me to an expected $500 for my immediate family. I would then go through that exercise with every donor group that I've listed. It might be easier for some than others to predict, but again, you're not looking for perfection or absolute accuracy here. This will just give you an idea of what you'll be able to raise from your Rolodex, which can be really important as you start to think through what your budget might look like. So as you start to build your Rolodex, I'd encourage you to make sure you're thinking about the average contribution and the number of people in each group so that you can just get a better idea of what you'll be able to raise and what you'll be able to spend and what you'll be able, or excuse me, what you'll need to find elsewhere. So we already talked through this a little bit, but going through that practice of finding your raise projection tells you what you can expect to raise from the people you know. It's also just a helpful way to organize all of the names that you'll source later on. So having the spreadsheet is helpful because organization is helpful, right? So as long as you're methodical and put in as much information as you can as you do this, aka including every donor group, and making sure you do think through those numbers, you'll have a good setup as you start to build out your Rolodex and launch your fundraising operation. All right, if you have any questions at this point, if you can go ahead and type those into the text box in the webinar toolbar, and I'll turn it back to Nancy to facilitate for us.
Yes, I actually have some questions ready for us. So I think it's super cool that you talk to everyone to create your contacts, even people from elementary school, which I would never think to do, but like my elementary school teachers would probably want to help me out. So it's a good point to make. But all right, so our first question is, why is fundraising such an important part of telling my campaign story? Can't I demonstrate my viability in other ways like policies?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, you definitely can show viability in lots of ways. Policies are important. You are probably running for office because you have policy ideas and things that you care about. Definitely, that's an important part of your campaign story. Your personal story is also an important part of your campaign narrative. Who you are, why you're running, what you've done in your life, what you care about, those are all important pieces. Fundraising just brings in a different element. When you think about fundraising, that puts actual strength behind your campaign, shows what you'll be able to do to make sure that you're the person who's in office and able to fight for those policies. It's also important to think about how they're all interconnected, right? Your fundraising will help you tell your story, it will help you to talk about your policies, and your policies will help you fundraise. So all of these pieces work together. I'd encourage you to think of it holistically and see how they fit.
Yeah, so true. I feel like fundraising does give you an opportunity to connect with voters or other people who just might be supportive of you. So cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So our next question is, I don't come from a community with a lot of money, and I feel bad asking when I know people already don't have a lot. Are there other ways I can fundraise?
Oh, that is such a good question, and something that I think a lot of people are thinking about. Um, Couple of thoughts. First, don't make assumptions about people. You don't know what people care about necessarily, and you don't know what their capacity to give is. So I'd encourage you to still ask everyone you know and still put everyone you know down into your Rolodex, regardless of what you know or think you know about their financial situation. The other thing to consider is that you're not asking people to give you money for you. You're asking people to invest in a campaign that is going to build something better for your community. So chances are people want to be a part of that, especially if they're people that you know. So I think the most important thing to think about though really is don't make assumptions and give people the opportunity. Don't let people decide. Wealth isn't necessarily an indicator of people's ability or willingness to give to causes, which your campaign certainly is.
Yeah, this is so true. Grew up in a low-income family, but we'd go to church every Sunday, and my parents always had the tradition to always give money every Sunday, even if we were struggling. So I think people give what they care about, and you won't know unless you ask. Obviously, don't be a pushy person, but ask, and if they say yes, and then that's amazing. So cool.
Absolutely. People give when their priorities align.
Yeah. All right, so our next question is, how far in advance of the campaign or filing petition to run do you recommend we start having this conversation with those in our network?
Totally. So as soon as you're considering running, I'd encourage you to start Rolodexing. I would just start thinking through all of these different donor groups, start getting names on paper, working through what we're about to talk about next, making some average contribution estimates, that type of thing. In terms of conversations, you should always include people in your decision-making process. Include your family and friends in, ask what they think. Do they think you'd be a good city council member? Is there something else they think you should run for? Do they think this is the right year? Take other people's thoughts into considerations. Chances are they know you pretty well if you care about them and they care about you. Um, One other important flag is that you should be cognizant of your state, local, federal finance laws. There's different rules about when you can start fundraising, like actually making asks and receiving contributions. So just check with your state board of elections, federal regulations, or local rules.
Yeah, so true. Okay, our next question is, I have a lot of friends and family, but a lot are Republicans or not political. Can I still ask them for money?
Yes, absolutely. Even if you have folks in your circle, your personal circle, that don't agree with you on every issue, you should still for sure ask them to invest in your campaign. Chances are that they care about you. They want you to win your race, even if they don't agree with you on every issue. And chances are they care about things that you care about too, at least in some way. They probably want smart, compassionate, honest leaders in office. Guess what? They probably think you're all of those qualities. And you also probably have something else in common. You can always circle back to values when you're talking to them. They, again, probably care about smartness. That's not a word. About smart ideas, compassion, honesty. They might care about other things too. You might all care about clean water. I'd think about what you do have in common and base your asks off of that. Don't discount them, include them in your Rolodex.
Yeah, you never know. Just always ask, I guess. All right, and our last question for this section is, do I have to self-fund my campaign? How much money do I need to do that?
Oh, a good question. Also, you definitely don't need to self-fund your campaign. Very few people do that. I would actually encourage you not to do that. I would encourage you to fundraise, get buy-in that way, create viability that way, tell your story that way. Um, When you are bringing in lots of donors, you're bringing in lots of folks who are engaged in your campaign, who care about it, who will talk about it. And also, you're finding other people that will support you and share your priorities and spreading the word about your campaign that way.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Those were all our questions for this section, but we are going to have another Q&A section at the end, but I'm going to go disappear again and let Sarah continue with the training. See you all later.
Thanks, Nancy. All right, so we will keep going by talking about how you develop your list. So you've already put in all your donor groups, you have a spreadsheet, you've listed all of those groups from your early life up to present day. Next, you're going to do a deep dive into all of your contacts. We'll talk about some spreadsheet formatting in a minute, but you're going to want to gather lots of different sources to find those names that will fill the tabs. So the first things you'll want, your cell phone. You probably have a lot of contacts in your cell phone. I know I do. All of those names, every single one of them, should go into your donor group somewhere. I'd encourage you to scroll through and categorize people into the groups they fit in. Do the same with your personal email. If you have a business email where you can do that, go for it. Be careful, follow your workplace rules, but if that's something that's appropriate, you should. Also look at organization and team rosters. Do you play softball? I keep going back to softball. If so, look at your softball team list. If you belong to a club in your area, also look at those lists. Consider alumni lists. I have a list of all the people I graduated high school with. I would include most of them, anyone that I actually know personally, in my Rolodexing. And the folks that I don't know, I might go back to later on, but I'll start with the ones that I do. You can also look at any alumni magazines from or groups or schools that you graduated from and include names that are listed in there. Look at your holiday card list. If you are married, look at your wedding guest list, school directories. All of those things can provide names of family and friends that you might not think to include, but that you should. You should also look through all of your social media friends. So look at Facebook, look at your LinkedIn contacts, look at people that follow you on Twitter. Include those people into your spreadsheet. Look at board member lists for every organization you're associated with and every club as well. By gathering all of these tools, you can do some heavy data entry and think about all of the folks that you know and make sure you're not leaving anyone off. Once you've gathered these tools, it's a great time to ask for help. I would start by looping someone in from your life, whether that be a partner, a friend, someone else you know who can help you actually comb through these tools, whether that be a yearbook or something else. Pull out names and actually physically put them in the spreadsheet we'll talk about in a second. I'd also include other people to get more names for your Rolodex. Think about your partner, your best friend, mentors. Ask them to Rolodex themselves. Think of other people they know that you can include. So if you're thinking back to a course you took in graduate school, ask your mentor from graduate school who else you should consider from that course, that time period in your life, etc. Loop other people in. They'll help you think of names. Additionally, think through each donor group and try and find a connection within each one. They can help you with some of those additional names I just talked about and also with contact information. So if you have a friend from high school who stayed in touch with a lot of other friends from high school, maybe your friend was the class president and is still really active. They're a great person to make the quote unquote team captain of that donor group. Maybe they can help you find every phone number you need and include names that you probably wouldn't have thought of but should have. And then finally, ask for referrals. Ask everyone you know who's in any of these donor groups who else would be interested in your campaign and include them. They can become a personal contact with an introduction. And then just a reminder, the goal of your Rolodexing session, your entire Rolodexing process, is to connect with as many people as possible, regardless of how long you've been out of touch. So you might not have talked to people you went to elementary school with or your elementary school teachers in a while, but you should still include them because your goal is to talk to as many people as possible. So back to our spreadsheet. We have that front page that has all of our donor groups on it, and then our projections, our raise projections, our estimates, all of that. You're going to scroll to the bottom and you'll add some tabs. You're going to have a lot of tabs by the time you're done with this, and that's the sign of a huge Rolodex. Go ahead and create a new tab for each of your donor groups. You will add the names and contact info of lists of people that fit into that donor group for each tab. And then if you find a name that doesn't fit in a donor group, create a new one. If you're scrolling through your phone and find a person that you know from somewhere that you don't know anyone else from, that's fine. Create a new donor group. Other people might float into it later, other people might not. So this will at least give you a way to organize yourself. So once you've gone ahead and put in all of those initial contacts, you've gathered your yearbooks, you've gathered your Christmas card lists, all of that, you've gone through your Facebook friends, you've put every person into a donor group, the tabs are filled out, you've put in some contact info, your work is not over. So you'll do this once initially. I would do this before you launch your campaign, as soon as you're thinking about running, like we talked about in the Q&A. You're going to need to go back to it. Rolodexing isn't a one-time thing. Schedule time now on your calendar to work through these lists. It's a huge undertaking, right? Chances are you're not going to knock it out in an afternoon. It's something you'll need to keep doing. However, it's important and it's worth the time because this is the foundation of your entire fundraising operation. I would keep your Rolodex in mind anytime you see someone. If you run into an old friend or a colleague, check and see if they're on your list. Add them in if they're not. And then every few months, schedule some time, actually block it out in your calendar to do a review. At this point, you can add in folks that you've missed. If you totally forgot about the knitting class that you took a year ago, this is a good time to add it in. You can also throw in new contacts. As you run for office, you're going to be meeting more and more people. Maybe you attended a new DEM club. Maybe you spoke at a charity event and met lots of folks there. You should create new donor groups and add people in as you meet them. Again, cannot emphasize enough how important it is to put that on your calendar. By actually setting the time aside, you'll make sure that your Rolodex is up to date and that you're meeting your fundraising potential. Next, we'll talk a little bit about reconnecting with your network. We've talked about talking to people who you might not have talked to in a while. That was the word talk in a lot of ways. So you're going to need to find ways to reconnect with them. I use the elementary school example. Maybe it's been a while since you were in college and you need to find a way to make those conversations seem natural. I'd encourage you to proactively reach out to people that you know, schedule casual virtual coffees or meetups, start to bridge that gap. So get back in touch, let them know that you're running for office, loop them in. This is a cool and exciting thing that you're doing. Make sure that they know about it. Attend events. This is just a part of running for office. Chances are your calendar is filling up. You might not have in-person events happening right now. Hopefully we will one day soon. They might be virtual at this point, but attend class reunions, go to professional conferences. If you see an invitation to a happy hour, go to it. That's a great way to get back in touch with people. Sending holiday cards is one of my favorite tips. I'm not a huge holiday card person. I don't always send them, but if I were thinking about running for office at this point, I definitely would. Holiday cards are a great way to remind people of what you're up to. Great way to put in some life updates, great way to reconnect with people. Holiday cards are an easy thing to do regardless of what your background is, and people appreciate them. Who doesn't love mail? That's an easy way to get back in touch. And then also just acknowledge different life events and birthdays on social media. Another quick thing to do. If you see it's someone's birthday, tell them happy birthday. Quick way to reconnect. Also just keeps you connected moving forward. A couple of other quick things to remember. Emily's list stands for early money is like yeast. Your Rolodex is the foundation of your fundraising operation, like I said. It will help you bring in money early, and then just like yeast, early money rises. So you'll raise more money once you have that firm foundation. A good Rolodex, one that's well thought out and includes truly everyone that you know, will help you go far and will really help you as you start to move beyond the personal circle into your ideological power and axe to grind circles. Next, again, don't make assumptions about who will give. You need to ask everyone you know and let them tell you yes or no. If you don't ask, you're effectively deciding for them. And why would you take that autonomy away from them? Let them tell you no if they can't give. You don't know what people's priorities are or what they are able to invest, so go ahead and make an ask. I also wouldn't be afraid to ask for recurring contributions. If there's someone in your life who's not able to give you $100 today, but can give you $10 a month, that's $100 in 10 months, which is great too. And that gives you money you can count on over time. Recurring contributions are a great way to bring in people from your Rolodex that maybe can't make a bigger gift all at once. And then finally, just a quick reminder, you should always make donating on your website easy and clear to navigate. So make sure you have a big donate button in a bright color so people in your personal circle and in your Rolodex can find it and give as soon as they know that you're running for office. All right, at this point, we're ready for more questions. So if you have some, drop them in the chat and I'll turn it back over to Nancy.
Awesome. Yes, I'm back with our next round of questions. So the first one is, how do we fundraise? How do we raise campaign funds during this pandemic?
Oops, I muted myself and then kept talking. Well, that's a good question. I know it's something a lot of candidates are worried about. I would continue fundraising right now, and I think that's what most candidates are doing. I'd continue call time. If you want tips on call time, we have webinars and resources on that. But continue call time right now. Use your best judgment around who to call and when. So maybe you remove medical providers and first responders and small business owners, people who work in the service industry, people who've been really financially affected by this pandemic. Take them out for now. But even with this more targeted call list, I'd really focus on listening to what your donors are saying. Some people might have reprioritized their budgets and political giving might not be possible for them, which is fine, but still ask. And also listen. It's important to know that information, especially around people that you care about, your personal circle. Other people are more motivated to give. There's more need for transparent and responsible leadership right now, and candidates like you are able to do that. We've been seeing record fundraising numbers for the past few months at all different levels of office, which I think demonstrates that people are still giving at really high levels. So I'd encourage you to keep fundraising and also emphasize to your donors that they're investing in responsive and compassionate leadership when they invest in your campaign.
Yeah, so true. Thank you. So our next question is, my friends want to be supportive, but they're as uncomfortable with fundraising as I am and are nervous to give me contacts to call. How can I address their concerns?
Yeah, that's another good question. I know that fundraising can feel like a strange thing to do. Most people haven't fundraised before, right? It's something new, and it's something that's not, it just doesn't always feel super natural. But I would encourage your friends to remember that you're not fundraising for yourself and not for something that goes towards you necessarily, but you're fundraising for your community. You're running to work on specific issues, you're running because you care about specific policies, and because you want to bring those values that you have to leadership. So I just reiterate that to your friends. I would remind them that as often as you can. I would also work on meeting your friends where they are. Figure out how you can involve them in a way that feels comfortable for them. So they might not be able to just give you a list of names to call at this point in time, but maybe they can share some email addresses. Maybe they can call their friends on your behalf. Maybe they can post a donate link on their Twitter, etc. Maybe they can host a fundraiser for you or a house party where you make an ask once you're there. These are all different ways that you can loop them in, but just because your friends are hesitant doesn't mean that they won't be able to help you with fundraising.
All right, our next question is, I appreciate the natural ways of reconnecting with your network, but I'm really nervous about connecting with people I haven't talked to in a decade and then asking them for money. Do you have any tips on how to call people who maybe aren't as online or with whom it's harder to reconnect before you call?
Yeah, totally. That's definitely a fair question and something that would make me nervous too. But I've worked with a lot of candidates before who have successfully bridged that gap and reconnected with people. Something that I think about is that if a friend of mine who I hadn't talked to in 10 years was running for office, I would still want to know. That's really cool. That's big news. Running for office is a big deal. You're doing something important and neat and exciting. So I would remember that sharing that news with your friend or whoever it is in your personal circle isn't just about fundraising, it's about sharing a life update. So I'd
Yeah.
first think about that. The other thing that I would do is just remember that people typically will want to help you. If they care about you, they'll want to be a part of your campaign, whether that's investing financially, whether that's running phone banks, whether that's volunteering at some point. So framing your thinking that way can be really helpful in overcoming that hurdle. The other thing too is just working on staying in touch going forward. So once you've reached out to someone to tell them about the campaign, add them to your email list. Even if they don't have social media accounts, lots of folks have email addresses. So maybe you can do that. Um, Reaching out to share campaign news is just a chance to reconnect. It doesn't need to be all about the campaign. You can also share information about your family, learn about their family, ask what they're up to those days. So viewing it a little bit as more of a chance to connect and less of a solicitation can be helpful.
Yeah, that's so true. I would definitely feel excited if I found out that like one of my childhood friends or old classmates was running for office. So I definitely agree with that. But that actually is the last question for our Q&A section and our training as a whole. So I just first want to start off by saying thank you to Sarah for sharing her wealth of knowledge on Rolodexing. And I hope you all came away with some awesome tools and skills now that you can use going forward. So thank you so much, Sarah.
Thanks so much for
So
having me.
yeah, no problem. So now I'm just gonna do a quick closeout. Oh, and I'm so sorry, Sarah. Do you want to come back for the key takeaways? I got a little bit ahead of myself.
Oops, I did too. Yes, I would be happy to be back. We have a couple of key takeaways that are important despite the fact that I left before them. Um, so, creating a comprehensive map of your network is super important. It lets you start your campaign strong. It's the way to launch your fundraising. When you have a fleshed out Rolodex, you're able to launch an operation that brings in more and more and more people. It snowballs. You'll also want to start raising right away from the people you know. Do this Rolodex early. This is not a project for 4 months after you launch your campaign. This is a project for the day you start thinking about running for office. And then finally, remember that you need to bring people in. Ask them to help. Ask your partner, your friends, your family, your colleagues to also Rolodex themselves. Think about who else you should be including, who you haven't included that you should be. Ask everyone for help, ask to network, ask for access to their networks. All of these things will help you launch the strongest fundraising operation possible.
Yes, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. So now I will do a quick closing. Firstly, by thanking our partners so much. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to put these trainings together. And also, thank you so much to all of you for joining us today. I hope that, again, you learned some valuable information that you can take with you on your journey to elected office. And I just want to remind everyone that we are going to be sending around a recording of this webinar for you to refer back to when you need it, and also a follow-up survey for some more feedback so we can continue to improve these trainings for you. All right, so I also just want to plug our training center. So here at Emily's List, we have our Run to Win campaign, which is committed to training pro-choice Democratic women to run for office. And we just want to make sure that you all are aware of resources that are available to you. So firstly, we have a Facebook group that you can join. It's called Run to Win. And it's a community where you can connect and seek advice from women who have run in the past, are currently running, or want to run in the future. It's just a great way to connect with a larger community. And we also have our training center, which you can see here. This is a really awesome tool if you want handouts, specific modules and videos on Rolodexing, but also on all the things that you need throughout your journey of running for office. So it's a really great way for you to stay connected and to get even more resources. And that's it. Thank you all so much for tuning into our webinar today. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will be in touch with you all soon. Thank you so much. Bye.